What is the true price of silence? Not the silence that brings peace, but the kind that hides deep wounds, masks painful truths, and slowly tears families apart. This is a story that transcends sacred texts, a tale of power, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of inaction. It is about a man revered as a king after God's own heart, yet who failed profoundly as a father. Journey with us to ancient Jerusalem, where royal corridors echo with footsteps and whispers, and where the silence of one man leads to the unraveling of an entire dynasty. Through this narrative, we will uncover timeless lessons about leadership, family dynamics, and the perils of ignoring warning signs. As we delve into the lives of David, Tamar, Amnon, and Absalom, we will confront uncomfortable truths that resonate even today. How can someone so wise be so blind to the turmoil within his own household? And what can we learn to prevent similar tragedies in our own lives? Prepare to explore a story that, though thousands of years old, holds a mirror to modern families, revealing how the cost of silence is often more devastating than any overt act of violence. About 1,000 years before Christ, Jerusalem stood as a beacon of power and faith. At its highest point was the royal palace, home to King David, the greatest ruler Israel had ever known. He was a man of many victories. He conquered kingdoms, defeated giants, and penned psalms that touched hearts then and now. Yet behind the grandeur of his reign lay a complex family dynamic that was anything but harmonious. David had multiple wives and concubines, a common practice among monarchs of his time, resulting in a large family of sons and daughters from different mothers. This intricate family structure sowed seeds of rivalry and tension among his children. Amnon, his firstborn, was next in line for the throne and enjoyed special privileges. Absalom, another son, was renowned for his beauty and charisma, traits that would later fuel his ambitions. Tamar, Absalom's sister, was a young and virtuous princess, unaware of the storm brewing within her own family. The palace walls, while majestic, could not contain the undercurrents of jealousy and ambition that flowed among David's offspring. Each child had their own entourage, followers, and the ambitions of their respective mothers pushing them forward. The royal household appeared to function under a veneer of normalcy, with David dividing his time between state affairs and his family. However, subtle signs of trouble began to emerge. The isolation of the children within their own maternal groups and the lack of close parental supervision created an environment ripe for discord. David, preoccupied with his kingdom, failed to notice the dangerous dynamics unfolding under his own roof. The same man who could skillfully navigate the complexities of leadership was blind to the perilous paths his children were treading. Amidst this tense atmosphere, a figure emerged who would become the catalyst for the impending tragedy. Jonadab, David's nephew, and a so-called friend of Amnon. Described as a very cunning man, Jonadab was well placed to influence the royal siblings. He recognized Amnon's growing obsession with Tamar, which had consumed the prince to the point of illness. Instead of guiding him away from his destructive desires, Jonadab devised a sinister plan to help Amnon achieve his illicit goals. He suggested that Amnon feign illness and request that Tamar attend to him personally. Knowing that neither David nor Tamar would suspect foul play, Jonadab's scheme exploited the trust inherent within the family. The plan was simple yet diabolical: manipulate the customs of care and concern to create an opportunity for Amnon to be alone with Tamar. Amnon embraced the plan without hesitation. His willingness to deceive his own father and exploit his sister's kindness revealed the depths of his moral decay. Jonadab's influence highlighted how vulnerable the family was to manipulation from within. The lack of oversight and the presence of ill-intentioned advisors like Jonadab underscored the fractures in David's household. The warning signs were clear: unhealthy obsessions, suspicious counsel, and unusual requests, but they went unheeded. The stage was set for a tragedy that could have been prevented had vigilance and moral integrity prevailed. Tamar, embodying innocence and duty, went to Amnon's quarters to tend to her supposedly ill brother. Unaware of the trap laid before her, she prepared food in his presence, displaying the compassion expected of her royal upbringing. However, as she offered him the meal, Amnon's true intentions surfaced. He seized her and demanded that she lie with him. Shocked and horrified, Tamar pleaded with him to reconsider, invoking moral, legal, and familial arguments to dissuade him. "No, my brother," she implored. "Do not force me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this disgraceful thing." Her appeals were a testament to her strength and wisdom, even in the face of imminent danger. She suggested speaking to the king, hoping to find a lawful resolution or at least delay the impending violation. But Amnon, consumed by lust and blinded by entitlement, refused to listen. He overpowered her and committed an act that would shatter her life irreparably. The violence of his assault was compounded by his immediate disdain afterward. The scriptures recount that Amnon's love turned to intense hatred, and he callously ordered Tamar to leave, adding humiliation to her suffering. Devastated, Tamar tore her ornate robe and placed ashes on her head, traditional signs of mourning and despair. She left crying aloud, a broken figure in a palace that failed to protect her. News of the atrocity reached King David, and he was furious. Yet in a moment that would define the course of his family's future, he chose inaction. Despite his anger, David did nothing to punish Amnon or seek justice for Tamar. His silence was a profound failure of leadership and fatherhood. Some suggest that David's own past transgressions, like his sin with Bathsheba, rendered him paralyzed with guilt and unworthiness to act. Regardless of the reasons, his lack of response sent a devastating message. Tamar sought refuge in her brother Absalom's house, living in desolation. The palace became a place of sorrow rather than safety. David's failure to act not only denied Tamar justice, but also allowed the seeds of vengeance to take root in Absalom's heart. The king's silence was more destructive than any external enemy could have been. It eroded the moral fabric of his family and undermined his authority. In failing to address the crime, David neglected the teachings he himself upheld. Scriptures emphasize the importance of justice and parental responsibility, yet David turned a blind eye to the turmoil within his own household. His silence was a tacit acceptance, leaving a void where leadership should have been. This inaction would soon lead to consequences far beyond his control. Absalom, seething with anger over his sister's violation, spoke neither good nor bad to Amnon. For 2 years, he harbored his hatred in silence, planning retribution. Unlike David's passive silence, Absalom's was active and calculating, the quiet before the storm. He orchestrated a sheep-shearing festival, a customary event marked by feasting and celebration, and invited all the king's sons. Feigning reconciliation, Absalom specifically requested Amnon's presence. David was hesitant but eventually agreed, unaware of his son's true intentions. During the festivities, when Amnon was in high spirits from wine, Absalom gave the signal to his servants to strike Amnon down. The assassination was swift and ruthless, sending shockwaves through the royal family. The other princes fled in fear, and initial reports to David erroneously stated that all his sons were dead. The king was devastated, tearing his garments in grief. Although it was later clarified that only Amnon had been killed, the damage was irrevocable. Absalom fled to exile, and the family's fractures deepened. David's earlier inaction had now led to fratricide, compounding the tragedy initiated by Amnon's crime. The aftermath of Amnon's death and Absalom's exile plunged David into further despair. He mourned for his sons, one dead, one estranged, and the daughter whose life was ruined. The royal family's unity was shattered, and the kingdom felt the repercussions of the king's personal failures. David longed for reconciliation with Absalom but struggled with the complexities of justice and forgiveness. The cycle of violence and silence continued to spiral. David's inability to address the root causes of his family's disintegration only led to more instability. The scriptures note that David's heart yearned for Absalom, yet he took no decisive action to bring him back or to restore order. This indecisiveness eroded his credibility as both a father and a king. The kingdom observed these events, and whispers of dissent began to spread. The people's confidence in David's leadership waned as they witnessed the chaos within his own house. The lack of accountability and the absence of justice set a dangerous precedent, not just for the royal family, but for the nation as a whole. The personal failings of the king were now a public concern, threatening the very fabric of Israel's society. David's shortcomings as a father and leader became increasingly evident. He failed to recognize the warning signs of discord among his children, neglected to administer justice when it was most needed, and allowed his past sins to impede his present duties. His inability to confront difficult situations head-on resulted in catastrophic outcomes. The king who once bravely faced Goliath was now avoiding the giants within his own family. He lacked vigilance, failed to enforce discipline, and did not foster an environment of open communication. His passive approach created a vacuum that was filled by violence and rebellion. The scriptures emphasize the importance of righteous leadership, yet David fell short in his most immediate responsibilities. These failures serve as timeless lessons on the consequences of inaction and the importance of confronting issues directly. The tragic events that unfolded were not merely due to the actions of his children, but were also a reflection of David's own neglect. His story illustrates how personal weaknesses can have far-reaching effects when one is in a position of authority. The tale of David and his children is not just an ancient narrative, but a mirror reflecting the challenges faced by families today. The dynamics of jealousy, rivalry, and the consequences of silence are as relevant now as they were then. This story urges us to be vigilant, to communicate openly, and to take decisive action when necessary. Modern families can learn from David's mistakes by fostering environments where dialogue is encouraged and issues are addressed promptly. Establishing trust and maintaining moral integrity are crucial in preventing the breakdown of relationships. Parents and leaders must be proactive in guiding those under their care, recognizing that inaction can lead to unintended and devastating consequences. The importance of accountability, justice, and compassion cannot be overstated. By confronting problems head-on and not allowing past mistakes to hinder present responsibilities, we can prevent the cycle of silence and violence from repeating itself. The story serves as a powerful reminder that the cost of silence is often greater than any immediate discomfort that comes from addressing difficult issues. The narrative of David, Tamar, Amnon, and Absalom is a sobering examination of the devastating effects of silence and inaction within a family. It highlights how the failure to address wrongdoing can lead to a chain of events that not only destroys individual lives, but can also have wider societal implications. This ancient story resonates today, emphasizing the critical role of leadership, both in families and communities. We are reminded that love must be coupled with responsibility and authority with accountability. The silence that David chose in response to Tamar's plight was not merely a personal failing, but a leadership failure that set the stage for further tragedy. His inability to act underscores the importance of confronting injustice, no matter how close to home it may be. In our own lives, we are called to break the silences that harm and to be vigilant stewards of the relationships entrusted to us. Open communication, moral courage, and decisive action are essential in nurturing healthy families and communities. This story challenges us to reflect on our own responses to wrongdoing and to consider the long-term consequences of our choices. Ultimately, the tale serves as a cautionary reminder that the true price of silence can be the loss of everything we hold dear. It encourages us to be proactive in love, steadfast in justice, and unwavering in our commitment to protect and guide those we are responsible for. By learning from the past, we can forge a future where the mistakes of David need not be repeated.